This week on the Wake and Bake podcast.
A cookie's not a dose. This would drive me crazy. Like, how much do you take? Half a cookie. Half a cookie is not a dose. Give me a ballpark. Just give me a ballpark. You do the dosage math and say you get 10 milligrams, but in reality, it's 8 or 12. Like, you're still in that zone, as opposed to like half a cookie and that's 20 milligrams. And I'm, again, to the moon.
And 20 milligrams, like here, half a cookie would be like 150 milligrams, like you're going to be on the moon for a few days kind of thing. You're going on a journey.
You're a different person. You might as well get out the shamanic playlist and go for a ride.
Wait, should we introduce ourselves?
Should we? Oh, yeah. Hi, I'm Corinne and Look it up. Look up my bio.
Perfect. We'll put it in the notes. We are who we are.
Google Andrea Maharg.
There you go.
Yeah, we're us. Welcome back to the Wake and Bake podcast. Today, what I want to talk about that is kind of cheating. I'm going to talk at CUNY, CUNY. I got invited by one of our former students, Keisha Carter, who's amazing, to go and talk about wake and bake and edibles and that kind of thing. And when they sent me the topic that I would be speaking on, it was formulating products for patients. And I was like, okay, like what would I say as a healthy cannabis recipe developer about formulating products for patients? And I did that thing that we were just talking about where I'm like, I intellectualize it and I'm like, okay, well, the first is consistency. So larger batches and like, this is, cannabinoid ratios and da, 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 da. And as I kept talking about it, there were some things that came up for me that I was like, really, this is an invitation for you to help people tune into what's happening in their bodies. Because when we're talking about dosage and titration, what you're really training them to do is feel themselves and to like tune into themselves and report back what changes are occurring and pay attention to themselves. And that's like you're literally teaching one of the foundations of self-care when you're teaching people how to navigate cannabis dosing. And so what I would love to do is have a conversation with you about what things are important when we talk about formulating products for cannabis patients, when we're talking about cooking with cannabis or creating our own products to help us feel better.
Love it. Love it. One thing that you just said, that I cook in large batches because like I'm a batch cooker by nature. And when I used to be able to grow my own cannabis, I had so much all at once. So I had to cook in a batch. The first thing that came to mind when you said, hey, what would you do for patients is totally keep it simple.
Shut up.
Is that yours?
Yeah, that's my second one. It was like, okay, consistency batch. My next one, keeping recipes really simple and straightforward. This for patients, the simpler, the better. We're so on the same wavelength. We didn't even research anything. Okay, go.
Yeah, because if you're a patient, that means you're dealing with something that makes your life extra tough and you don't need this to be one other thing that you have to do. And because it's so dang simple to make your own medicine, it's stupidly simple to make it. So if you can convey that to somebody who's struggling with something and they can actually go do it and it's simple and they can figure out the dosage. Ooh, I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You tell me, because you're a recipe queen. Like, what's your version of simple?
I'm looking at my notes right now. Well, that's the thing that's so interesting. My version of simple is like an oil, a tincture. I love creating things that have a lot of different components to them because it's fun for me. But when it comes to patients, the goal, especially in the beginning, of being able to pay attention and figure out what's working and what's not working, like keeping it just an oil or tincture, simple, straightforward. That was what I was thinking in terms of like not like trying to make a cookie and like a candies and all that kind of stuff. The only thing that I think really gets complicated and the reason that gets tricky for people when they start thinking about making their own products is figuring out the dosage of your edibles, right? That was the biggest thing. I've been a recipe developer and on the internet since 2012 now. And so, have developed a dosage calculator because of this, because I need it. And also everybody else wanted it. And obviously, ideally, we would have access to lab tests for home cooks and processors. In some places that is available. I know, at least it used to be in Colorado, you could get something lab tested, but it's very expensive to do that. And if you're making a huge batch and you're like making like a year's worth of something, like totally go get it lab tested. If you don't, making sure that you do your dosage math. And again, this is something that people skipped. I skipped it in the beginning. Sometimes I would do it at the end of like making the whole thing. And then I'm like, oh shit, everything's like 40 milligrams. I guess I'm going to have a nibble of that cookie, go blast off to the moon. using a dosage calculator before you make your edibles, for sure, or you make a tincture or an infusion. And that makes it so much easier and more straightforward. The thing about doing that and figuring out your dosage math is not to say like your 5 mg edible that you made and you figured out the dosage on isn't going to be the same as a 5 mg edible in a dispensary, right? But like it's going to be 5 mg of that particular thing, whatever it is that you're making. Like that's the consistency you're looking for, like you said. So you'll know if like that 5 mg is not enough in this particular thing. Do you have anything else to say about that? What it means, like that idea of keeping it simple, things to know about, processing the cannabis?
For me, keeping it simple is not an oil or a tincture. It's oil only. And I say that because so many people who I work with who have medical conditions, alcohol isn't a consideration for them. And alcohol up here is considerably more expensive, I think. So like a liter bottle, I don't know what that is in gallons, but like a liter bottle is like of Everclear-ish up here would be like $90. Like it's so, yes, calm down, right? The cool thing for me about an oil is, like you said, you can use coconut, you can use olive, you can use avocado, you can use any healthy ingestible oil that you'd like. And because it's an oil, you can start with like one drop that you could like put on your hand and then lick off if you needed to really start low and go slow. You know, sometimes when I tell people like I'm making an oil that you put under your tongue, it's hard to like imagine how much you would get out when your head's up and you can't really tell. So for some people, or you put it on a spoon and lick it off. Maybe that's more hygienic.
Yeah, this is how we take our CBD in Canada, everybody. You can't see me, but I'm licking my hand and rubbing my hair like a cat.
That is how we take our CBD in Canada. I would just like to announce it to the world. That is how it works. Because it's an oil, you can really customize it. And I think it's even easier to dose. Even a drop of alcohol-based tincture is hard because like a drop is like, sometimes you get 6, by accident with alcohol.
That's true. Plus, if you lick it off your hand and then you have alcohol in your hair and you smell like booze.
Maybe that's the reason why I don't recommend tinctures. The thing that we haven't even hit on is that even right from the start, instead of like, what are you making? What cannabinoid are you using? For many people, that's going to be CBD who are diving into this world. Maybe you want to save money on CBD or you want to get into it or you grew a plant that has lots of CBD. And for lots of people, that's going to be THC. And people always ask me, hey, Andrea, like you think everyone should be taking CBD and some people should be taking THC. Why don't I just have that product together? And I think especially when you're starting out, having them totally separate is the way to go. So whatever cannabinoid you're going to use, stick it in some oil, follow Corinne's recipe, do the thing. That's the simplest way to do it if you're a patient and you want to make your own. You were going to put them together.
Yeah, I'd probably put them together. Unless your goal was to do CBD and you're like, I know that I don't want that much THC, I would put them together. They're friends. They like being together. When you're talking about patients, you're talking about individualistic goals. And so what I was going to say in my CUNY talk was that there's this individualization and this education opportunity when you're talking about either you as a person, like who makes edibles or who is a cannabis educator or a coach or whatever it is, talking to patients about it, you get this educational opportunity to teach them about this plant, right? And if you're learning about edibles, which I do believe is like the gateway drug to cannabis science and to cannabis and spirituality and to like topicals and suppositories, and then you're growing it, and then all of your clothes are made out of it, and then you're the person that cannabis built. Like, everyone is coming to cannabis for a different reason, right? We all have such personalized goals when it comes to this plant. For me, it was pain. For you, it was depression. We've heard hundreds, thousands of different stories about people coming to this plant, and there's always like a general category of it. I'm coming to this for fibromyalgia, but the reasons that they seek it out, their relationship with the misinformation or the stigma and from prohibition is going to be different. So the way that they use cannabis might be either filled with shame or filled with excitement or neutrality or whatever it is. The way that they approach the plant and their goals of living are going to be different. Some people want help sleeping, so they're using it to wind down and to, trigger those processes. Some people want it because they want to feel like themselves throughout the day. And they want some mood shift in their world. And like, that's the whole thing about when you're talking about this huge topic of like making products for patients. I'm like, which one?
Yeah.
It's like, it's not just that everyone comes to it for a different reason, but it interacts in your body completely differently. And this isn't to say like that it's the most complicated thing in the world, right? Because I think it sounds like I'm making it sound really complex right now. But when you are, I'm just going to assume that people who are listening to this are cannabis professionals, or they are somewhat down the cannabis rabbit hole and they want to share that with others. You know, they're nerding out about this either because they really want to know how it works in their own body, you know, and what's going on, like you said before, or because they're already in a place where they want to help others. And one of the things that I think is really magical about this work is that you get to also speak medicine into this plant when you are sharing this information. Literally, what people believe about this plant shapes their experience with it. And you get to, as a person who is either formulating products for someone else, like put the magic, right? Deliver that magic along with whatever it is. So say you're making cookies for your auntie, you know, who has rheumatoid arthritis or whatever, and you give that to her and you say, hey, auntie, like, did you know that cannabis does this for me? And I made these cookies especially for you because it does X, Y, and Z. And I think what happens innately is that person, as they consume that, is more tuned into that. And I just think that that's such an incredible thing about making products, as a person who doesn't make products commercially or any of those kinds of things, is that if you're making products for people that you know and you get to have these conversations, it can completely change the way that someone feels and thinks about this plant and completely change the opportunity to create healing for this plant. So that's pretty cool.
Full circle right back to where we started with the student on our call who was talking about this profound experience that she had just had in the hospital. And she went into the hospital. She's just moved to a state where cannabis is medically legal. And she came in like actually carrying a little bit of like fear that she was going to go to the hospital. She was going to say, cannabis is my medicine for a gastro condition that I have. And they were going to say, oh my God, you're terrible. And they said, cool, we don't care. Just like do it outside. And for her, that was like shedding a whole layer of bad stuff there. And she's in the hospital so that she can get better. And then because she's in our class, she said, and I'm not tooting our own horn, but like getting information on this plant does impact how it's going to affect you. And so because of this class, she decided in hospital, I'm going to use my cannabis, but I'm going to use it medicinally. Instead of consuming a whole bunch, for example, she was only able to take small amounts, and she noticed a difference. She was able to tune into what was happening with her body and go on to have the story of advocating and getting herself out of the hospital, and importantly, having a calm, rational conversation with her healthcare providers about what she needed. She was able to say, this isn't working, and here's why. She wasn't racked with anxiety, and she wasn't super angry because she had used cannabis as a medicine. And even her, a consumer long-term of cannabis, who has quite a bit of information, even making the mental shift for her of like, oh, I'm going to look at this today as more medicine than anything else, affected her trajectory. And she was on our call today. She just got out of the hospital yesterday and she was fucking full of piss and vinegar, that woman, you know, she was like ready to take on the world. So I love the idea of teaching people right off the bat that just changing how you think about this plant as you're making these things for yourself as a patient or for somebody else as a patient, and delivering it with that tiny bit of information can make such a huge difference.
It can make such a huge difference. And I think about the different things that resonate for all of us in terms of like unwinding the prohibition so that we can start thinking about cannabis differently, because that is a huge block for so many of us. Is like, there's this internal shame and stigma, like, I shouldn't be using this as a mom. They're going to think I'm a druggie. That was reflected in her story as well. For you, it was history, the history of why cannabis was prohibited. And that was when you were like, oh, this is all bullshit. Like, this is all bullshit. And for me, it was like how cannabis works in the body to create what they say is homeostasis. And so I've thought about this for years, this idea of like this plant bringing balance. And, you know, that's been the concept in my mind. And as I was thinking about all of this, the piece that is like further helped that evolve, I guess, for me is that balance isn't this steady state. Like, it's not this flat line kind of thing. And I think cannabis, in the way that it works, can show you that. I always say that it's the most dynamic plant medicine. And for me, it's so much like of the dance and like how you're relating to your body that it tunes that in as well. And when I really focus on that when I'm thinking about using intentional cannabis, or even before I use cannabis, it really amplifies the awareness of that I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. We're coming into balance here. What does that actually look like? And it's like these receptors giving and receiving. It's just like this beautiful thing to me. Yeah, I just think that building meaning in for ourselves and for the people that we have conversations with about this plan is just like so fun. And like it starts to unwind all of that bullshit that comes up that's like, oh my gosh, but they're going to think I'm lazy and sleepy, or, full awareness of the fact that this isn't legal everywhere, right? You can still go to jail. So some of those fears are absolutely founded. I'm not just saying that it's just our mindset by any means, and we still have to do a lot of work there, but I think it hinders a lot of people from being able to fully access what this plant is. Even if it's just thinking about not even the bad stuff, but like it's when you are thinking about cannabis and the first thing that pops in your head are like joints and bongs, and that's what you conceive of as cannabis, and it's this limited perspective. There's no way that you can get the benefits from cannabis that you could if you only viewed it in that particular way. And that part of the stigma, I think, is even more limiting. I'm going to do the nerdy thing. If you open it up I'm making a cookbook right now, everyone. This is not a plug, but it's bath bombs and these like amazing CBD sticks. There's a massage one, and there's a sports stick, and holy anointing oil, and CBD sunscreen, because you never want to put your CBD salve on in the summertime. I can't stop, right? A CBD roller. Like there are so many ways to use this plant, and it takes like consistency. Hopefully I won't rant like that tomorrow. Just everyone, hey, come look at the things I made.
I kind of feel like you should rant tomorrow. I think it's so important that people see beyond smoking weed and THC. That's like saying the alphabet has the letter A or something. Do you know? Like there's a whole world inside of this plant that people, for some reason, aren't connected to. They don't understand that this wellness and health and beauty and life-saving, that's all this plant as well.
Because once you start on that journey, if you're like those of us who get curious about stuff like that, like you said, why is this working? Why does my body feel better? Why do my shoulders go down? Why do I take a deeper breath? Why is playing Legos so much fucking fun right now? You see that it's the most dynamic plant medicine that interacts with your most dynamic system.
Yeah, it's a gateway drug to like just being obsessed with the plant, like just being like so in love with it and not being, yeah, okay, I see why people don't want us to smoke weed, because we won't shut up about how cool it is after. We're sorry, everybody. Yeah, actually, fuck that.
I think this is a great episode of the podcast.
It's because we're awesome at this, apparently, in season 3, right? I'm excited about the magic about this plan, and just every single time we come together with our like crew of Cannabis Institute people, I get goosebumps. I come away with huge smiles on my face. I hear story after story after story of cannabis changing people's lives. And then I hear all these stories. Did you hear what some of these students are up to? Like they're all doing such amazing things, and they're going to go out there and like change the world. So I'm here to talk more about that shit. Like just how life-changing, beautiful, magical this plant is, and how we can spread that out to the world.
Yeah. And I think what was cool about today too, when we were talking to those students who are still in our student group, is that we always get to think about our grads who have already gone out and changed the world. You're like, holy shit, I knew them when. Just straight up. You were talking about JJ O'Brien today. We talked about Takesha Carter when we were on our call. And when you brought up JJ for the first time, I literally flashed back to like, I knew her when she was like, oh, I think I'm going to do this particular thing. And now she's an icon in cannabis and cancer, and navigating that in her own journey and supporting so many people in doing that. And also in cannabis education, right? She's like running Education. She's like all this amazing stuff. Like I remember when she was like, I think I'm going to do something over here. Like so cool. So if you want to do that, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I can speak meaning into a plant and make magic in the world and understand this plant and how it's working for me so deeply, and share that with others, and also start a business doing it, putting on workshops or retreats or making a podcast.
Running a private nonprofit foundation based on harm reduction in Cape Town, South Africa, having conversations with people who have no understanding of this plant. We have people doing the coolest things, and you should come hang out with us.
come hang out with us. We're enrolling for another cohort. Make sure you subscribe, because if you don't subscribe, there's no way you'll know. Episode 1 in the can.